Welcome to Around the Blockchain. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Awesome. All right, Jordan, welcome to Around the Blockchain. If you can just give the viewers a bit of an introduction as to who you are and what you do in the blockchain space.
So my name is Jordan Michaelides. I work for an organization called CoinJar, and based here in Melbourne, I'm the head of partnerships and the institutional side of the business.
Awesome. How did you get into like Bitcoin, crypto, and the blockchain space, Jordan?
So it was interesting when you gave me those notes. I was thinking about how I got into it. I had been dabbling. So I finished university sort of 2012, and I remember being in a class and someone saying or talking about crypto. And to be very honest with you, because I was trading oil futures at the time, I thought it was just another scam, so to speak, to get into. But I kept an eye on it, just generally through Reddit, and got out into the corporate world. And then I think 2 years later, I met Asher, and Asher and I worked at the same workplace. So we worked at this company called Ibis World, and Ibis World is essentially like a data intelligence company. They do a lot of research they cover every single industry and company in Australia. But if you're like a bank, institutional bank, investment bank, private equity fund, pretty much any government department, you're utilizing this data. And he and I just got generally chatting about crypto, and I sort of experimented from there.
Yeah, wow. And so is that when you sort of took the leap and I guess started sort of investing, I guess, in Bitcoin was probably the main crypto around then?
Yeah, I mean, the space when I first got into it, there was really nothing to trade on. I mean, this was the day of like having to store crypto yourself in your own wallet or on your computer. So I waited until CoinJar basically launched. And so it would have been 2013, 14 that I first bought my own cryptocurrency. And at the time when they launched, they only offered Bitcoin. So yeah, that was sort of my first initial dabble into it.
Yeah, right. And when did you start working with CoinJar?
So I was at Ibis World for, gosh, it would have been 4 or 5 years. And at the time, I'd created my own little podcast called Uncommon, where we sort of interviewed business leaders, entrepreneurs, stuff like that. And because I knew Asher, I lent on him as sort of one of the first guests in the first like 20 episodes. So I interviewed him. A lot of things had changed for him in the business by 2017. I think he'd gone through the first crypto winter, the true winter of sort of 16, I guess you would say 2015, 16. To be honest, apart from 13, 14, that in-between period was rough for a lot of people in the space. So I interviewed him, and, a couple of months later, because we were doing work through our podcast for other people, I was sort of bored with the job that I was doing. And I'd come up with a thesis around value investing in crypto, and I sent it to Asher just for him to have a read through. And he said, "Hey, do you want a job? I've got this thing going on." And at the time they were trying to launch. So this would have been late 2017, maybe September, October. And they were trying to launch a crypto fund, like an index fund, first here in Australia, so to speak. And they needed a salesperson. And that was my role at Ibis World, account manager, so to speak. And, it was very wishy-washy at first, but then I got him to sort of lay down some proper details, and I was on board at CoinJar by February of 2018 at the pointy end, I would say, of that bull run. And for the preceding months afterwards, as I came on board and we launched the fund, the market completely tanked. So that was my introduction to crypto and coming on board with CoinJar.
Yeah, that would have been a rough time to sort of start a new role in crypto, I could imagine.
Super rough.
Yeah, a
lot of people who were telling me it was a bad decision as well.
Yeah, so those voices sort of were playing in the back of your mind, I suppose.
Yeah, because at the time at Ibis World, I was in a senior position, and I probably would have been the next person to become a senior manager of sorts in essentially like a family-run business in a way. And I think when I resigned, a lot of people were shocked. And people that I'm still, there's one guy in particular that I'm still friends with to this day from the firm. And for the first year that I left, all he did was like, "Are you sure you made the right decision? Are you sure you made the right decision?" Because like at the time, every coffee catch up I had with him, like the price just got worse and worse and worse. The situation got worse.
Yeah.
And we were running into issues with launching the fund anyway, because it's a complex process. And so, yeah, I had lots of people in my ear for those first 6 to 9 months.
Looking back on that situation now, would you say it's been a worthwhile move, obviously, from your comfy sort of cushy job to going into the, I guess, less stable crypto world?
Yeah, I think in hindsight, very lucky that I went to a company like CoinJar and with founders like Ryan and Asher that don't make short-term decisions. It would have been easy to let me go during that period for sure. But there's no doubt when you're sort of one of the leaders in the industry and one of the first movers, you do have a market advantage. And I think that gave them enough headroom to continue to have people like myself to hire Dom eventually as the CMO and invest in sort of the customer facing marketing partnerships team. And I think in this last bull run, and based on Ash's experience in the previous bull run, he knew that the doubling down on those people and making sure that they were in the know, they had the right touch points, would be the better long-term decision. And for me, it was absolutely valuable. It's really interesting looking at it in hindsight and thinking about the people that were in the market back in 2018, sort of early 19 versus late 2019 to sort of mid 2020. There are whole businesses. OKX is a good example. I don't know if you remember OKX, but they launched here in Australia and they went bust within 6 months, at least here locally. So no, it was the best decision I ever made. It opened up a lot of things for me as an individual.
Speaking about some of the changes that I guess the industry's gone through, what would you sort of say you've obviously been in the crypto space itself for a while, and then obviously with CoinJar through 2018. What would you sort of say are some of the major sort of changes that have occurred between, I guess, now, so where we're sort of sitting now, mid-June of 2021, and then sort of going back over your history in the crypto space?
Yeah, I mean, it varies. I think the biggest change for me, because to me, this industry is a very retail-led industry. I know one of the biggest memes at the moment is how important are institutions and companies flocking into this space, which they are. They're part of it, right? But to me, it's actually the regulation elements. When I first came to CoinJar, you were not, although we did KYC, so your classic digital ID verification, which we had set up with Ozpost way back in the day, you didn't have to do that. Anyone could start a crypto company. You could offer trading. You could be a market maker. You could be an exchange. Basically, you could sign anyone up as long as you could get a functioning bank account. There was really no licensing regime or anything to sort of bear down on the industry. But I think within 6 to 12 months of me going in, so late 2018, I'm trying to think when the AusTrack regulations came in, but 2019 was the year for sure when I noticed it. So anyone who operated a DCE or digital currency exchange had to be registered with AusTrack. And a lot of businesses closed because they just could not afford the compliance and financial regulation costs with that. So that to me was the biggest trend. You then started to see things like, the ATO integration. Everyone complained about that, but I think that was a big move for legitimizing the industry. And what I mean by that is plugging all digital currency exchanges have to publish or push data to the ATO. I don't know if you remember that period that sort of came through late 2019, and that was a real big meme at the time. And I think the final thing that will legitimize this industry and make it a household product, because, I was there a month ago after the Melbourne deal debating with Neil Mitchell that this isn't a gambling product. And those are the people we have to convince that it is a better outcome for them in the long run versus fractional reserve banking and a monetary system that's closed by a central body that may have political interests. And so I think, yeah, licensing is the biggest and most important thing without a doubt. And the moment the industry has an AFSL or potentially a sort of banking license, I think will be absolutely crucial and the most exciting changes to me by and large. But, you know, when it comes to just quickly on the coin side of things, we've been through sort of the initial shitcoin stage, that market crashed. And then when we've had the new one with sort of your sushi and pancake swaps of the world and NFTs being the most recent trend, those just come and go. That's the next hype product in the market, I'd say.
Yeah. Look, you've touched on a few really, really sort of key and interesting points there. I'll wind it back. So the next one I wanted to talk about is you're head of partnerships at CoinJar. So you're in charge of, you know, business to business / you know, corporate sort of deals at CoinJar. And you recently were involved in a relatively, I would say a pretty significant moment in history, especially within the Australian sort of crypto community, where the Melbourne Football Club, so the Melbourne AFL Football Club, actually jumped on board and had you guys come on as a sponsor. How did all that sort of take place? And I guess what was your role within that process?
Well, I don't know if you ever noticed this. Are you like a sort of Premier League fan at all?
I'm not. I'm a sports fan, so I do sort of
Yeah.
keep I guess that sort of at an arm's length, and I keep sort of one eye on it. But I'm not a massive fan.
So I would say the UK market is by far and away, when it comes to crypto, fintech, all that sort of stuff, way advanced in comparison to the US and Australian market and Europe, of course. Basically, we started noticing a trend. It must have been late 2019. There was this trend of like all these commercial managers at big soccer clubs reaching out to us, and COVID made that more apparent. So at the start of 2020, when things are getting bad in the UK, I think I had 10 of the 20 major league clubs in the UK, their commercial manager reach out to me about a potential brand deal. So these are brand deals where basically on the sleeve you would have the company on it essentially. And there was already Forex companies which were jumping on the bandwagon because FX and CFDs is a massive market in the UK. And so we were just discussing internally, like, how does this fit into our wider marketing strategy? Because for crypto firms, it's pretty straightforward. It's all been digital in the past, but we are cut off from certain platforms, whether it be Facebook and Google and whatnot. So you have to be creative. We reached out to an agent here locally in Melbourne, so a sports agent. This is someone who typically would help book deals of sponsorship with cricket clubs, with footy clubs, soccer clubs, etc., basketball teams, rugby. And basically we said to them, look, we're interested. Can you go touch around and see who's interested in the market? And a couple months went by, nothing really happened. And then it became apparent that the AFL was sort of the best angle based on our sort of current demographic, and also putting us in front of a lot of new people in Australia. And we basically just profiled what are the clubs that are most of interest. We looked at clubs like Melbourne and the Bulldogs. There was another one in there as well. And yeah, I think late May, those two clubs were in it, and the deal was done within like 3 days. It was very, very quick.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a simple sponsorship. We just wanted something that put us on the same level as the big household name firms. You know, if you look at our sponsorship now, we're next to Jaguar, Zurich, and sort of well-known household name brands. And Melbourne was sort of the perfect fit, the one that we settled on. It was done very quickly. And I just remember I was on honeymoon when the deal was being done. So I was on the phone. We'd left on that Saturday, started really happening on Monday. And by the end of the week, we already had the billboard design done. Not the billboard, but the LED signs that you see around the ground. And our CMO Dom on the Sunday was at the president's luncheon. So it was very quick, very, very quick.
That's awesome. Look, do you have any plans for international sponsors? I know you've just sort of mentioned a couple of major, people within the Premier League and stuff like that, possibly interested. Is that sort of still on the cards, or are you going to focus mostly on, domestic sponsors here?
It's definitely still on the cards. I think it depends on what happens in the UK market for us. So we relaunched in the UK in probably the start of 2020. That market is by far and away our fastest growing market. However, it is still small in comparison to Australia. But we have plans for Europe and the UK. Our CEO is based in the City of London. So he moved over there in 2019, probably the end of 2019, I think. We've got a new compliance manager there who obviously specializes in the FCA. We've got our FCA licensing application, which is sort of in its final stages now. We've hired support staff there. I think we would look at that sort of thing, but we're still a small fish in a big sea, I think, in the UK. So we've got a ways to go, I think, before we look at that sort of marketing.
Yeah. What have you guys got planned for the remainder of 2021? Look, we've had obviously, quite a bit of stuff happening recently, especially with the Elon stuff and a whole bunch of stuff happening in Miami as well with Bitcoin 2021. What have you guys sort of got planned for the remainder of the year?
So there's a few major things that are happening that I can speak to. The first one that we've been doing a test for that'll be out this week and probably when people are listening is the launch of a few more stable coins. So WBC, USDT, WBC for those that don't know, wrapped BTC. There's a lot happening there in terms of new coins. We'll continue to list new coins so long as they're reputable projects. So that's on the coin side of things. They're actually more on the retail side of things. The CoinJar card is going to go from an FBOS card to a MasterCard. So people will be able to touch and pay wave with that in future. And we hope that that'll be done in the latter part of this year. There's new institutional products coming out that I can't speak to at the moment, but the people that we're working with are household name sort of brokerages that mainly dabble in the stock, equities, bond space that will be able to offer crypto to their customers. So we're offering sort of a clearing product to them. And there are two major brands in that space. And then the other partnership that we have going on is with a buy now, pay later provider. So that'll be someone who essentially allows their customers to buy and sell crypto and use crypto on transactions. So they're the big ones at the moment. We get pitched, obviously it's a boom market right now. We get pitched for things, and particularly because of the Melbourne deal, we get pitched for stuff non-stop at the moment. So if there's a product idea that anyone's thought of, we've been pitched it. At the moment for us, the biggest issue is just focusing engineering resources and trying to find more engineers as the market continues to grow.
Yeah, wow, that's some major sort of steps forward, not only for CoinJar itself, but I guess for crypto itself within Australia. You've obviously got some pretty big deals and stuff coming through, which is going to be interesting to see. Yeah, that's
For sure.
pretty awesome news. So I'll be looking forward to seeing sort of what happens towards the later end of the year. Look, you touched on institutions. Has CoinJar seen much interest from institutions here domestically, without obviously naming institutions specifically? But have you guys sort of seen a bit of an uptake in institutional interest here?
Yeah, and institutional interest can be anything from a known corporation to just an ordinary business trading day to day, your local car wash, so to speak, or a major fintech company or a social media company. There's sort of a few different groups of people, and they all started onboarding in different waves in late 2019 and have continued throughout 2020. So that first group was probably the fund managers. They had always been there in 2019, but they really came with a vengeance in late 2019. So pretty much every sort of fund you could imagine, whether they're macro funds, hedge funds, everyone was trying to get in the pie of crypto in some form. You then had the next wave, that was probably early 2020, was family offices. So if you imagine any major founder of a large company in Australia, and most of them were in the fintech or tech space. So we're talking big household name tech brands that had been grown over the last 5 to 10 years, their family offices were starting to trade with us directly on the OTC market. And then I think, that was the biggest trend. And then we started sort of seeing more proprietary trading firms, and then you started getting more and more applications that were quite varied. Like I said, you have sort of these app type businesses, like your buy now, pay laters, to like a well-known social media brand, which sort of offers like a linking service, just buying crypto to have it on their balance sheet. And that trend has been the most recent one, simply because Elon and Tesla have bought crypto to hold on their balance sheet as a type of reserve. So that's been a big one as well, for sure. But yeah, we've noticed a massive trend, mainly because our biggest trading group is the retail client base. And to sort of build liquidity, we've offered 0% taker fees for institutions. When people go on CGX, they can see that on one side of the trade, essentially, you've got 0% fees. So for those who are wanting to arbitrage, for a lot of institutions, it's very beneficial. And for us, it's great because it means we don't have to hedge our risk, and the trading desk doesn't have to manipulate or do anything on our back book to sort of level out the balance or our daily exposure based on what clients are doing. So yeah, it's great. It's very, very exciting. It means we finally have a real two-sided market. Like I said before, this game has always been retail led, but now the institutions are trying to get in, and it's proving to be very, very interesting because of it.
After Tesla sort of put Bitcoin on its balance sheet earlier this year, did you guys see a major uptake, not only through the institutional side of things, but were also your retail onboarding numbers sort of, starting to, I guess, sort of come through thick and fast there as well? Did that sort of have a major impact on that as well?
Yeah. I mean, look, what did I saw something the other day where when I was, just to give context, I mean, at late 2019, I think the lifetime exchange value of the firm had been like 1.3 or 1.5 billion. So that's transacted between fiat crypto and crypto to crypto. And then I think I saw the other week, in February, that we did that in 1 month, or maybe it was even more than that. It might have been like 1.5 billion transacted. And the lifetime transactions that we've done is something like 7 billion now, 5 to 7. It's in that figure. I'd have to look back on our database to double check. I only look once a month. But when you have moments like when Elon says, or a major figure like that says that they put Bitcoin on their balance sheet, you get what happens, which is the price went up, I think, like 20-30% within a 2-3 day period. I remember looking at our Slack going off, our internal Slack going off that night, saying what's happened. People saying just go on Twitter and look at Elon, and then all of a sudden that has flow-on effects to signups. It has flow-on effects to requests for contact from corporations, because most of the time they're just putting in like a contact form, whereas retail individuals are just going through the sign-up process. And I mean, we can sign someone up within 3 to 5 minutes. So the numbers we were doing were like in the thousands in terms of signups on a daily basis. So yeah, it was pretty crazy numbers. That was for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You've brought up I guess, interesting point there as well. Your sign up process, I can't fault it. It is incredibly quick. Your CoinJar is actually the first exchange I signed up to back in 20. I think it was 2017. Okay. August 2017. I've actually still got the transaction saved on my phone. Bitcoin was trading at roughly 5,000 Australian dollars. And yeah, I just invested. I think I invested about $500. It wasn't much.
Wow.
But yeah, it was incredibly easy to get sorted. And I run a business outside of doing this podcasting and stuff as well. And part of our like treasury is we also buy crypto. So Bitcoin and Ethereum are the two sort of major ones we look at.
Uh-huh.
And even that process was super simple too. It wasn't too difficult to get started at all. The app's brilliant. I think it's very, very user friendly. So I guess for anyone watching who hasn't signed up to CoinJar, I would probably, yeah, look at one of those as, or that exchange as my first sort of option, just because it's so user friendly.
Yeah, and that's the aim, is sort of we want to be that everyday product, make things super easy. Yes, you're going to pay higher fees for certain types of activities, but all of those fees really just go back into building the product and making it awesome. And later this year, early next year, there will be quite a lot of new products coming out. Like I said, the MasterCard. So yeah, we're super excited, and I'm glad to hear that you had that experience.
No, thank you. Look, I'm looking forward to towards the end of the year. I think that MasterCard announcement's a pretty big one. That's going to be an interesting one to watch and sort of see what happens off the back of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, word on the street is that crypto exchanges in Australia, both at the retail level and at the wholesale sort of investment level, a lot of people have been speaking with the Australian government to sort of push legislation through, and I guess sort of help them kind of come up with some relevant legislation, because from all accounts, it seems to be relatively outdated, and there's some gray areas and stuff like that. Where do you sort of see the space going? Do you sort of look at, I guess, regulation as a positive or a negative for the crypto space?
Well, for me, before I got into the space, I mean, you get your Bitcoin maximalists who believe that there's no point in it, it's irrelevant, etc. And like, my personal view is that I think anything that makes crypto mainstream is fantastic, because it just gives more leverage and insight and power to the individual. It cedes a lot of that power away from centralized institutions, and I think makes it a more competitive capitalist market. To me, crypto is much more of a capitalist market, but there are issues with that. And unfortunately, you've got to work to the lowest common denominator. Since getting into the space, I will say that before joining CoinJar, I was of the firm belief that not your keys, not your money, essentially. You should have the keys to your own wallet. I had a cold wallet, but I've also seen the other side of that, which is most issues of hacking, cybersecurity events, most issues of people losing money in this space is human error. It's scams. It's being scammed by someone individually. And that concerns the government, because what happens is people that happens to, which is often in most cases, is people who are less literate digitally, they complain to their elected official. And so that makes those officials perk up and pay interest and focus on this space. And I think it would be good for people in the long run that we have businesses that are regulated, that you have recourse as an individual against an exchange. I think all of these things are a good thing for the consumer. There are certain protections that a decentralized system cannot offer, because it places all of that on you. And so I think some element of government in areas that they can control, so making sure there's no dodgy operators. I think that's the biggest thing for me, is making sure no dodgy operators get into the space. And two, if you were ever to lose money from a dodgy operator or someone who has operated poorly in this space, that you would have some form of recourse or way of recuperating some of that money. That's the biggest thing for me. And so for that, I think there should be an AFSL license in this space. Whether it's its own standalone license, I think that would be ideal, because it is a little bit more complex than FX. But I could also see ASIC instituting crypto falling under the FX AFSL license. So yeah, I think regulation's good in some forms. It still cannot stop what most people do nowadays anyway. It won't be able to change what most people do nowadays anyway. You can still use products like Monero if you really don't want people seeing what you're doing. But yeah, I think regulation is absolutely crucial for getting people like my parents to be involved in the crypto space.
I couldn't agree more. I don't think the space is, I think the space will get to a certain point, and then it will sort of really, really struggle to keep moving forward if there isn't sort of regulation in place. And like you've just said, my parents my dad's 72 and my mum's 68, I think.
You're right.
68, somewhere around there. And so like they'll never get involved unless, you know, they can sort of understand that there, you know, are some kind of safety mechanisms in place for them, and you know, the space is sort of regulated. And you're right, like those bad actors and stuff that are going around doing the wrong sort of thing definitely need to, yeah, find a new space to play in, or don't play in a space at all, because they just kind of ruin it for a lot of people, and they kind of end up, you know, pushing or perpetuating that FUD that, you know, Bitcoin's a scam and the whole crypto space is a scam, which is not good for anybody.
And that's why I have to get on calls with Neil Mitchell on 3AW and like get into these arguments where he tries telling me that it's essentially a scam. It's because of those. There's always a minority, and unfortunately they exist, and we just have to work towards that lowest common denominator. And to the point about your parents and my parents, the thing that will really make them get into it is when institutions like Vanguard or your super fund dictate that in a balanced portfolio, 1 to 5% is allocated to crypto. That's the moment where this is officially mainstream and no longer just a fringe group of people who are interested in it. I think that'll happen once the industry's licensed. So hopefully that happens soon.
I was about to ask, do you foresee that happening sometime soon, say within the next 6 months before the
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not as much involved in compliance nowadays as the company's grown. I remember it was really a quasi job between operations, sales, and finance. So 3 people, myself, Brian, James, we'd all have some sort of impact or understanding of what was going on. Our general manager, James, was really involved in it. But now as the company's grown, we have compliance managers, general counsel. I really don't hear much about engagement from ASIC as yet. So it would be nice to hear more about that, but that doesn't mean that they don't once a year reach out, chat to us, that we continue to have conversations with organizations like the AFP, the ATO, AUSTRAC, etc. Those things happen every year. I would just love to see it all fast tracked and announced in the next year, but I think COVID sort of made that a bit difficult when they're all really focused on COVID, so to speak.
Yeah, sort of took the spotlight off the space, and obviously they've had to deal with COVID instead.
Of course, yeah, that was the big thing for them as a sort of sector in 2020, without a doubt.
Absolutely. Where do you personally see the space going, Jordan?
It's a good question. I think for the next few years, we'll continue to see new products being utilized. I think in the next 2 years, we'll probably start to see a lot of these, what people would dub shitcoin or smaller projects actually coming to fruition. I think the NFT space, for someone who's also involved in media, will be fairly legitimized even further. I think at some point, a major entertainer will probably bring out some sort of NFT, whether it's a movie star or a music artist. I think NFTs will continue to grow as a section of the economy, the crypto economy. And I think probably in the next 5 years, we'll see licensing. So those are the 3 main trends I would like to see. And I have a sense that they will come, but how long it will be, I couldn't tell you, to be honest. I will probably look back on this in 6 months and think, what am I thinking? Making those predictions.
It's so hard to predict. What's your personal opinion on NFTs? Obviously, NFT art has sort of been quite a big sort of thing within the, I guess, first 6 months of 2021. Have you sort of been watching that space closely, or?
Yeah, very closely. Because in the business that's run on the side by my wife and co-founder, we sort of specialize in influencer marketing, social, and we have quite a few talent that we have signed. And I've been experimenting with it because we have a creator who wants to create his own NFT. He's got a massive audience, like 8 to 10 million people on TikTok. So there's definitely some legs there. I think it gives them another avenue and a proper avenue to make money. Essentially what it is really just buying reprints. At the end of the day, people think they're buying some original piece, but it is a reprint. I think the space is a bit frothy, and it's because of people like Lussucks and what's Elon Musk's partner's name, Grimes, and the like, that get on Nifty Gateway. So I've seen some absolute crap out there, but I also have to recognize that person may have an audience that I just don't see and don't know. So I think it's great. I think it's given people a way to earn income, particularly during COVID. And the best application I've seen so far is Gary Vee and Friends. I think that was fascinating because it gives you other accrued value that ordinarily would be a verbal form of value or something that you could luck into by getting a meeting with Gary. He's actually monetized that. And this system has given him a way of monetizing meeting Gary, going to events with Gary, speaking to Gary. I think that is super fascinating to me. And I think we'll see other people doing it as well.
I'm super glad you said that. I actually bought one of Gary Vee's VFriends NFTs.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Which
yeah.
one?
I got a Stunned Sun. So it's just a common card that basically gets you entry to the VCon conference, which I want to sort of use as a bit of a networking opportunity. But I totally agree. I think what he's done is really interesting. I think, like you've just said, a lot of celebrities and stuff will start sort of following suit, I think, after the success of his, VFriends launch. I've been watching that space very, very closely. I think it's going to be a bit of a game changer for NFTs, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think what it does is it allows creators that would struggle to monetize to build a more direct relationship with their audience and monetize in that way. I think a lot of talent managers, there are so many tools like this in the crypto space and the digital space that are going to make talent managers of old basically redundant. And I think it's going to make them have to be very commercially driven, very experimental and willing to try things out like this. I can see an agency like ours getting pretty involved in helping a creator launch their own NFTs in some form in years to come. So I think it's definitely going to shape up that space, in particular the talent space. So yeah, it's very, very, very exciting for me.
Absolutely. Look, Jordan, do you have any sort of closing thoughts for the viewers?
Nothing that comes to mind other than do go check out CoinJar. Do approach this in a smart and intelligent way. I think a lot of people, I hear it on podcasts, friends' podcasts. Have you heard of this crypto stuff? Do you have any crypto? What have you bought? What have you got? I think at the end of the day, it comes down to buying tried and true projects that have real life application today, which is really things like Bitcoin and Ethereum. And you should buy some of that. You should allocate 1 to 5% of your portfolio in that. And then you should start experimenting with other things. Do a lot of reading. It took me a year of reading before I ever invested properly. So that is the common mistake made by most people. And what I would suggest is tried and true, and then start to experiment. Don't go blowing your money on just Pancake Swap or something like that. Like, approach it intelligently. This is a 10 to 20 year prospect for you as an individual. So that's the best way to go about it.
Awesome. Look, Jordan, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you jumping on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.